SEAMUS, the Irish Wolfhound, meets VIPs at central London. His fur, thick and shaggy, swayed with every step he took, giving him a majestic and almost royal appearance. Standing at nearly 3 feet tall at the shoulder, he was a sight to behold. People on the streets of London often stopped in their tracks to stare, whispering to each other about how incredible he looked. But for Seamus, life was simple. He didn't care about the attention or the whispers. He loved his daily walks, the fresh air, and the company of his owner, a retired soldier who had lived in the heart of London for many years. On this particular day, something special was happening. Seamus and his owner were heading out for what was supposed to be just another regular walk around Hyde Park. Little did they know, this walk would be unlike any other. Seamus's owner had recently received an invitation to an exclusive event being held at one of the city's most prestigious art galleries. It wasn't just any event. It was a gathering of VIPs, politicians, artists, celebrities, and well-known philanthropists, all coming together to celebrate a new exhibition. It was the kind of event most people only dreamed of attending, and Seamus's owner was honored to be invited. But there was a twist. The invitation wasn't just for him, it was for Seamus as well. The organizers had heard about the massive, gentle dog, and knowing how beloved he was in the community, they decided to extend the invite to both Seamus and his owner. As soon as the invitation arrived, Seamus's owner had been both shocked and delighted. He had always known Seamus was special, but he never imagined his dog would one day be a guest at a high-profile event. It was a crisp autumn evening when they arrived at the gallery. The streets of London had taken on that warm, golden glow from the setting sun, and the city felt alive with energy. Seamus's owner carefully guided him through the busy streets as people gazed up at the towering dog, their eyes wide with wonder. It wasn't every day that Londoners saw a creature of Seamus's size strolling through the city. His presence was enough to stop people in their tracks. When they finally reached the gallery, Seamus's owner was in awe. The venue was nothing like the small local exhibitions he was used to. The building was grand, with high marble columns and a large glass entrance. The red carpet had already been laid out, and inside, the sound of soft classical music filled the air. People were gathered in small groups, chatting about the art, the artist, and the upcoming auction. The room was filled with people dressed in their finest clothes, designer suits, evening gowns, and sparkling jewelry that glittered under the soft lighting. As Seamus and his owner walked through the entrance, the room fell silent. Every conversation stopped, and every pair of eyes turned toward the massive dog who had just entered. For a moment, the gallery felt like it had stopped spinning. All eyes were on Seamus, his shaggy coat flowing as he gracefully moved through the space, his large paws making soft thuds on the polished floors. People gasped in awe, some even taking a step back, unsure if they were seeing things. Seamus wasn't just any dog, he was a walking work of art. The gallery owner, a charming middle-aged man with a thick accent, was the first to step forward to greet them. His eyes widened as he took in Seamus's imposing size, but there was a twinkle of amusement in his gaze. He was no stranger to high-profile events, but even he had never seen a dog quite like Seamus. He extended his hand toward Seamus's owner, introducing himself warmly. "It's an honor to have you both here," the gallery owner said, his voice filled with genuine enthusiasm. "I've heard so much about Seamus. He's quite the local celebrity." Seamus's owner smiled, slightly embarrassed by the attention. He had always been a humble man, and while he loved his dog deeply, he never sought out the limelight. But Seamus, as always, was calm and composed, his tail wagging lazily behind him. He had never been one to get nervous in front of crowds. The larger the audience, the more he seemed to enjoy it. As the evening wore on, Seamus's presence began to captivate everyone in the room. People who had come to the gallery to admire the art were now gathering around to admire the dog. They marveled at his size, his elegance, and his gentle demeanor. Some people were even brave enough to approach him, extending their hands tentatively toward his massive head. SEAMUS, always gentle and kind, would lean down to greet them, licking their hands or nudging them affectionately with his nose. One of the most memorable moments of the night came when a famous artist who was exhibiting his latest collection spotted SEAMUS. The artist, a renowned sculptor known for his towering bronze works, was immediately fascinated by the Irish Wolfhound. He had seen many incredible sculptures in his time, but he had never come across anything quite as imposing as SEAMUS. As SEAMUS sat quietly by the artist, the sculptor knelt down and gently patted him, causing a ripple of admiration to sweep through the crowd. "He's like a living sculpture," the artist commented, his voice filled with awe. "The way he carries himself. It's as if he was sculpted from marble with such grace and strength, a work of art in motion." The crowd murmured in agreement, and soon, SEAMUS was being compared to some of the most famous statues in history. His size, his grace, and his commanding presence made him a living embodiment of art. The connection between SEAMUS and the gallery's guests was undeniable. He was no longer just a dog. He had become a symbol of elegance and beauty, his presence elevating the atmosphere of the event in ways that words couldn't describe. As the evening drew to a close, SEAMUS's owner realized just how much of an impact his dog had made. The gallery, which had been full of art and prestigious guests, was now filled with conversations about SEAMUS. People exchanged numbers, promising to meet again, but it wasn't the art they were talking about. It was the dog who had stolen the show. After the excitement of SEAMUS's grand entrance at the gallery, the night only seemed to get more thrilling. The buzz around the majestic Irish Wolfhound had spread quickly, and soon, the gallery was alive with conversations not just about the art, but about the remarkable dog who had stolen everyone's attention. SEAMUS had become the star of the evening, and there was no doubt about it. The VIPs, celebrities, politicians, and influencers who had gathered at the event couldn't stop talking about him. Some of them had even posted pictures of him on social media, and before long, the hashtag SEAMUS at the gallery was trending. The night had taken on a life of its own, and SEAMUS was at the very center of it all. People were drawn to SEAMUS not only because of his size and beauty, but also because of his calm, gentle demeanor. Unlike many dogs that would become overwhelmed by the noise and crowds, SEAMUS seemed to thrive in the limelight. He was a dog of grace, and his behavior had a way of putting everyone at ease. As guests approached him, he would wag his tail slowly, offering a soft nudge with his large head, a gesture that seemed to say, "I'm here for you." SEAMUS didn't need to bark or jump around to capture attention. He simply existed, and that was enough. One by one, VIP guests approached the dog, some more nervous than others. It wasn't every day that one had the chance to meet a dog like SEAMUS. A famous actor known for his roles in action-packed thrillers was the first to approach SEAMUS, his hand outstretched tentatively. He had always considered himself a dog person, but SEAMUS was unlike any dog he had ever encountered. His heart was pounding in excitement and nerves as he knelt down to pet the massive creature. SEAMUS, ever the gentle giant, lowered his head to meet the actor's hand, and with one soft lick he completely won him over. "That's it," the actor exclaimed, laughing with delight. "This dog is like a living teddy bear." Others gathered around, watching the exchange with curiosity and admiration. It didn't take long before the actor was telling everyone around him about SEAMUS. His enthusiasm spread like wildfire, and soon the crowd grew larger. People took turns posing for pictures with SEAMUS, some even giving him small treats or just rubbing his thick coat. SEAMUS seemed to enjoy the attention, but he was careful to stay grounded, never becoming overly excited or aggressive. His calm nature was part of what made him so captivating. He wasn't just a beautiful dog. He was an ambassador of peace, his presence bringing a sense of calm to the otherwise hectic event. Meanwhile, SEAMUS's owner, who had always been a bit shy about the attention SEAMUS attracted, couldn't help but smile as he watched his dog. He had always known that SEAMUS was special, but seeing how easily his dog captured the hearts of so many people left him speechless. The gallery had been filled with the finest minds and most influential figures in London, yet it was SEAMUS, a dog, who had become the evening's most talked-about guest. It was both humbling and surprising, and for a moment, SEAMUS's owner couldn't help but feel proud. His dog had a way of making everyone feel important, whether they were a famous artist or an ordinary gallery visitor. As the night wore on, the spotlight on SEAMUS only grew brighter. The gallery owner, who had been one of the first to greet SEAMUS, took to the stage for a brief speech about the exhibition. But even as he spoke, it was clear that SEAMUS was still the star of the show. His large figure could be seen in the background of every photograph, and people could hardly stop talking about him. The gallery owner knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime event, and he made sure to publicly thank SEAMUS for making the evening so memorable. Soon, a local television crew arrived to cover the event. They had heard about SEAMUS's unexpected appearance and wanted to get an exclusive interview with the dog's owner. The crew quickly set up their cameras, and within minutes, SEAMUS's owner was being interviewed about his dog's rise to fame. SEAMUS, as always, remained calm, sitting by his owner's side, his tail wagging slowly as the lights from the cameras flashed around him. It was as if he knew he was the center of attention, but he wasn't bothered by it. He simply sat there, enjoying the moment. "I never imagined this," SEAMUS's owner said, shaking his head in disbelief. "I just brought him here for a quiet evening." But I guess SEAMUS has a way of making any place feel special. He's not just a dog, he's a friend to everyone he meets. The television crew seemed equally captivated by SEAMUS. They filmed a segment with the dog, asking SEAMUS's owner questions about their relationship, how they had met, and what made SEAMUS such a unique dog. SEAMUS's owner shared stories of how SEAMUS had been by his side through thick and thin, offering companionship and comfort when he needed it most. The story was heartwarming, and the crew quickly realized that this wasn't just a segment about a famous dog. It was a story about friendship, loyalty, and the joy that animals can bring into our lives. As the interview ended, SEAMUS's owner felt a strange sense of fulfillment. He had always believed that SEAMUS was special, but now he could see that others felt the same way. SEAMUS was more than just a pet. He was a symbol of kindness, of peace, and of the incredible bond between a dog and his owner. The interview would air on television the following day, and SEAMUS's fame would only continue to grow. Yet, despite all the attention, SEAMUS's owner remained humble. He knew that at the end of the day, it was their quiet moments together, walking through the park, enjoying the simple things that mattered most. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. SEAMUS continued to be the star of the show, but as the night drew to a close, it became clear that the event had been about more than just a dog. It had been about connection, the connection between SEAMUS and his owner, and the connection SEAMUS had made with the people around him. Through his gentle nature, SEAMUS had brought together a room full of strangers, showing them that sometimes the most powerful thing in the world isn't a work of art or a high-profile guest. It's the love and kindness that can come from a simple creature, a dog with a heart as big as his size. As the evening wore on, the noise and laughter of the crowd seemed to fade into the background. Among all the glitz and glamour, a quieter moment was unfolding at the corner of the gallery, where SEAMUS, the majestic Irish wolfhound, found himself drawn to a woman sitting alone. She had been quietly observing the event from a distance, her eyes reflecting a mixture of interest and sadness. Unlike the other guests who were engrossed in conversation or in posing for photos with SEAMUS, this woman remained distant, almost as though she were lost in her own thoughts. She was a well-known philanthropist in London, often seen attending high-profile charity events and speaking about animal rights. Yet tonight, something was different about her. Seamus, in his usual calm and observant manner, seemed to sense that this woman was in need of something. He gently padded over to her, his large paws making soft thuds on the marble floor. At first, she didn't notice him. She was too deep in her thoughts, perhaps reflecting on the loss of a loved one or the pressures of her busy life. But as Seamus approached her, she looked up. Her face softened, and for a brief moment her expression shifted from one of sadness to something more serene. When Seamus stopped beside her and sat down quietly, she hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should reach out. But the gentle giant didn't need to do anything more than sit there. His large, soulful eyes met hers, and without a word, he seemed to communicate something unspoken. She slowly raised her hand, and Seamus, as if understanding her every movement, lowered his massive head. He allowed her to pet him, his thick coat soft under her fingers. The woman smiled faintly, her hand trembling slightly as she stroked Seamus's fur. She hadn't expected to feel so moved by the presence of a dog, especially not in the midst of all the luxury and prestige of the event. But Seamus had a way of calming people, of bringing them back to a simpler, more peaceful place. As she gently rubbed his ears, she began to speak softly, as if confiding in the dog. "I lost my dog a few months ago," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of conversation in the background. "He was my companion, my comfort, and now I feel so alone. I thought I would never find that kind of bond again." Seamus, as if understanding her words, gave a soft, reassuring nudge. He pressed his head gently against her side, his warm, furry body offering comfort. There was no judgment in his gaze, no pressure to say more, just an unwavering presence that seemed to offer solace. For the first time that evening, the woman's face relaxed, and a single tear slipped down her cheek. She wasn't crying out of sadness. It was more of a release, a moment where the weight of her grief felt lighter. The people around them had begun to notice the quiet interaction between Seamus and the woman. At first, they watched curiously, unsure of what was unfolding. But soon, they too began to recognize the power of the moment. Here, in the midst of a room full of high-profile guests, an unexpected bond was forming. One between a woman who had experienced loss and a dog who had an uncanny ability to heal. The crowd, who had been so focused on the art and the speeches, seemed to draw closer, not to Seamus as a celebrity, but to the raw, authentic connection happening in front of them. Seamus's owner, who had been mingling nearby, glanced over at the scene. His heart swelled with pride as he watched his dog. He had always known that Seamus was special, but moments like this, moments when Seamus could offer comfort without saying a word, reminded him of the true power that animals held in the lives of humans. Seamus wasn't just a pet. He was a healer, a source of peace in a sometimes chaotic world. As the woman continued to pet Seamus, the noise of the gallery faded further away. She closed her eyes for a moment, lost in the gentle rhythm of her hand moving through Seamus's fur. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel calm, to let go of the tension that had built up inside her. The overwhelming sadness that had been lingering in her heart seemed to dissipate, replaced by a quiet gratitude for this moment of peace. "I never knew a dog could do this," she said softly, her voice shaky but filled with appreciation. "I've always believed in the power of animals, but Seamus, he's something different." Seamus's owner, who had been quietly observing from a distance, slowly walked over to them. He didn't interrupt the moment, but he couldn't help but smile. There was something incredibly beautiful about seeing his dog help someone in such a profound way. "He has that effect on people," he said, his voice warm and gentle. "He's always known when someone needs him. He's more than just a dog, he's a friend." The woman looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I can see that. I think I needed him tonight more than I realized." Seamus's owner nodded, understanding more than she knew. He had watched Seamus do this many times before, offering comfort to people who were grieving, who were lonely, or simply in need of a moment of peace. It was as if Seamus had a natural gift for sensing when someone's heart was heavy. He didn't need to do anything grand, he just needed to be there. For the rest of the evening, the woman stayed close to Seamus. She continued to pet him, occasionally whispering words of thanks. And Seamus, ever patient, remained by her side, offering the kind of silent support that only a dog could provide. It was as though the world around them didn't matter. In that quiet corner of the gallery, the connection between Seamus and the woman was the only thing that seemed to matter. As the event drew to a close and the guests began to say their goodbyes, the woman stood up, feeling lighter than she had in months. She turned to Seamus and his owner, her face now radiant with a quiet peace. "Thank you," she said, her voice full of sincerity. "You have no idea what this means to me." Seamus's owner smiled, his heart full of pride. "It's Seamus who should be thanked," he said, as Seamus looked up at the woman with his big, soulful eyes as if to say, "I'm happy to help." With that, the woman walked away, her steps lighter, her heart a little less burdened than before. Seamus, with his calming presence and unwavering loyalty, had once again brought healing to someone who needed it most. And for Seamus, that was all he ever needed to do, be there for someone, offering peace in his own quiet way. After that unforgettable evening at the gallery, Seamus's life, and his owner's life, changed in ways neither of them could have predicted. What started as a simple invitation to an art event turned into something far more significant. Seamus, the giant dog with the gentle heart, had not only stolen the spotlight but had also captured the affection of an entire city. What had been a single night of unexpected attention had blossomed into a whirlwind of invitations, media appearances, and opportunities that both Seamus and his owner had never anticipated. The morning after the gallery event, Seamus's owner woke up to a flood of messages on his phone. The phone buzzed constantly, with calls and texts from friends, journalists, and even people he didn't know, all asking to meet Seamus or interview him. It was overwhelming, but in some ways it was also exciting. For the first time, Seamus wasn't just a beloved pet in his owner's eyes, he was a local celebrity. Seamus had become a symbol of kindness and peace, and people wanted to know more about him, to meet the dog who had brought joy to so many. Seamus's owner decided to embrace it, though he was careful not to let it go to their heads. They didn't need fame or attention, but it was clear that Seamus had a gift, and he was bringing happiness to people who needed it. So, Seamus's owner agreed to a few of the interviews and appearances that were offered. But no matter how busy their lives became, Seamus never changed. He was still the same gentle, quiet dog who loved long walks in the park, chasing after sticks, and lying by his owner's side at the end of the day. The fame might have found them, but it never changed the bond they shared. One of the first invitations came from a local animal shelter that Seamus had supported for years. The shelter had heard about Seamus's newfound popularity and invited him to be the guest of honor at their annual charity gala. It was a chance for Seamus to give back, and his owner agreed wholeheartedly. At the event, Seamus was the star, of course, but what stood out most was how humble he remained. The shelter staff were in awe of how he interacted with the guests, gently accepting pats and posing for photos with children. Seamus seemed to know that this event wasn't about him, but about raising awareness for the animals that still needed homes. The night was a huge success, raising much-needed funds for the shelter. The highlight of the evening was when Seamus's owner took the stage to speak about the importance of adopting and caring for animals. The room was filled with applause, but all eyes remained on Seamus, who had settled quietly by the stage, his head resting on his paws. It was a powerful reminder that no matter how much attention Seamus received, He was always there for the cause he believed in, helping those in need, especially animals. As Seamus became more well-known, his appearances at other charity events and community gatherings continued. But the attention wasn't always easy to handle. Seamus's owner, while grateful for the opportunities, started to feel the weight of constantly being in the public eye. It wasn't about the fame. It was about wanting to keep Seamus grounded, to protect him from the pressures that came with being so loved by everyone. Some people would follow them on their walks, hoping for a chance to pet Seamus, take a picture, or just talk to the famous dog. It wasn't unusual for Seamus's owner to find themselves stopped by strangers while trying to simply enjoy a quiet day in the park. While the attention was mostly positive, it also became a challenge to maintain their privacy. Seamus's owner often joked that Seamus was more famous than most people in London, and there was a certain truth to that. Despite the challenges, Seamus's owner remained grateful. The dog's fame had given them both a platform to do more good. They used the attention to promote animal welfare, raise awareness for the importance of adopting pets, and support causes that were close to their hearts. Seamus became a symbol not only of gentleness and kindness, but also of the incredible bond between humans and animals. His story inspired countless people to adopt animals from shelters, and his calming presence brought comfort to those who needed it most. But with all this new attention came a certain loneliness that Seamus's owner hadn't anticipated. As much as the two of them had always enjoyed each other's company, there were moments when the constant buzzing of phones and the steady stream of people asking for a piece of Seamus's time began to feel like a burden. Seamus's owner found himself missing the quiet, simple days when it was just him and Seamus, walking through Hyde Park without a care in the world. One particular afternoon, after a long stretch of public appearances, Seamus's owner decided to take a break. He put his phone on silent, grabbed Seamus's leash, and left their flat without telling anyone where they were going. He simply wanted to enjoy a peaceful walk with Seamus, just the two of them, without any interruptions. They walked through the familiar streets of London, the busy crowds fading into the background as they ventured toward their favorite spot in Hyde Park. It was a small, quiet corner of the park that most people didn't notice. Seamus's owner had always loved it because it felt like their secret place. There, they could sit on a bench, and Seamus could relax by his side, enjoying the calm of the park. As they sat together in the park, Seamus resting his head on his owner's lap, the noise of the world seemed to disappear. For a moment, there were no cameras, no reporters, no crowds. Just Seamus's gentle breathing and the sound of leaves rustling in the trees. It was a peaceful reminder of what really mattered, this simple, beautiful bond between a man and his dog. But the quiet time didn't last long. As they were getting up to leave, a few people approached them. They had recognized Seamus from one of the many social media posts that had gone viral. "Is that Seamus?" a young woman asked, smiling brightly. Seamus's owner laughed softly. "Yes, it is," he replied, though he could see the disappointment in the woman's eyes when she realized they were only passing through the park and weren't at some grand event. "I love what he stands for," the woman said. "I've been following him for weeks. He's a real inspiration." It wasn't the first time Seamus's owner had heard that, but today, it felt different. It reminded him that Seamus had become more than just a famous dog. He had become a symbol of something bigger, something that brought people together. It wasn't about the fame or the attention. It was about the joy Seamus brought to the world and the way he connected with people. As they left the park, Seamus's owner smiled to himself. He didn't need the fame to feel proud. He didn't need the spotlight to appreciate how lucky he was to have Seamus by his side. It wasn't the crowds or the appearances that made Seamus special. It was the quiet moments, the companionship, and the love they shared that mattered most. And as they walked home together, just the two of them, it felt as though life had returned to normal. For now, that was enough. As the months passed, Seamus's life and the life of his owner seemed to settle into a new rhythm. The whirlwind of fame that had followed that one fateful evening at the gallery had calmed, but the love and admiration for Seamus had not diminished. In fact, it had only grown stronger. Seamus had become a symbol of something deeper, something that transcended his size and beauty. He had become a reminder of kindness, healing, and the incredible bond that exists between animals and humans. But despite the continued attention, Seamus's owner remained grounded. He hadn't let the fame get to him, and he certainly hadn't let it change his relationship with Seamus. They still took their long walks through Hyde Park, still spent quiet evenings together at home, and still cherished the simple moments that had always defined their lives. The fame had brought opportunities to do more good, but the heart of their bond remained unchanged. Seamus's role as a local celebrity had led to several new invitations, charity galas, animal welfare events, even a few high-profile dinners where he was the guest of honor. His owner often attended these events, but he made sure that Seamus always returned to his roots after the spotlight faded. They never stayed away for too long. They always came back to their quiet walks, their calm routine, and their peaceful home. One particular day, Seamus's owner received an invitation that made him pause. It was from the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, RSPCA, inviting Seamus to be a special guest at their annual gala. It was a prestigious event, and Seamus's presence was considered an honor. The RSPCA was one of the most well-known animal welfare organizations in the country, and they had taken notice of Seamus's impact on animal adoption and awareness. After much thought, Seamus's owner agreed to attend. It was a special event for a special cause, and Seamus had always been passionate about helping animals in need. The night of the gala, Seamus wore his best tuxedo collar, an elegant leather band that had been gifted to him by a designer who was captivated by his regal presence. His owner dressed in a classic suit, still humble despite the growing admiration for his dog. When they arrived at the gala, they were greeted by the organizers, who were thrilled to have Seamus in attendance. The guests were all eager to meet the dog who had captured the hearts of so many. There were speeches, awards, and a charity auction, but the highlight of the evening was when Seamus's owner took the stage to speak. "I never imagined," he began, "that my dog Seamus would end up being a symbol of kindness and compassion. He's just a dog, a gentle giant who loves walks and naps, but somehow he's touched so many lives in ways I never thought possible." The crowd responded with warm applause, and Seamus, sitting quietly at his owner's side, seemed to bask in the admiration. But his attention was elsewhere, as always. He was content simply to be there, present in the moment, offering comfort and joy to anyone who needed it. During the gala, Seamus was invited to join a group of children who were part of a special program that worked with therapy animals. These children, some with physical disabilities and others with emotional challenges, had been trained to work alongside animals like Seamus. The children immediately gravitated toward the big dog, their faces lighting up with pure delight. Seamus, as always, was gentle with them, allowing them to pet him and even rest their heads on his back. The children laughed, and for a few moments they were no longer concerned with their struggles. Seamus had a way of making people feel safe, making them feel like they could simply be themselves. The experience was deeply moving for Seamus's owner. Watching Seamus interact with these children reminded him why he and his dog had become involved with so many causes. It wasn't about the fame or the attention. It was about making a difference in the lives of others. And Seamus, in his quiet way, was doing just that. As the night drew to a close, Seamus's owner was approached by a journalist who had followed Seamus's story since the gallery event. "You must be incredibly proud of him," the journalist said. "He's not just a celebrity, he's a beacon of hope for so many people." Seamus's owner smiled, but his expression was thoughtful. I'm proud of him, yes, but I think the real magic is that Seamus doesn't know how special he is. He doesn't care about the attention or the fame. He just wants to be there for people. That's what makes him so remarkable. The journalist nodded, understanding the depth of the bond between Seamus and his owner. It wasn't about Seamus's fame or popularity. It was about the way he made people feel, the way he connected with them on a deeper level. That was the real magic. As the evening came to a close, Seamus's owner felt a sense of fulfillment. They had made a difference that night, not through speeches or grand gestures, but through simple acts of kindness. Seamus had shown everyone in the room what it meant to be compassionate, to offer love without expecting anything in return. Back at home, as Seamus stretched out on his favorite spot by the window, his owner sat down beside him. The world outside was busy, the city alive with activity, but inside their home it was peaceful. Just the two of them in their quiet sanctuary where fame and attention no longer mattered. Seamus's owner thought about all that had happened in the past year, how Seamus had gone from a gentle companion to a beloved symbol of hope. He was proud of the difference they had made, but he also knew that it wasn't the fame or the accolades that mattered most. It was the quiet moments, the walks, the shared glances, the simple joy of being together, that had always been the heart of their relationship. And as Seamus's owner sat there, stroking his dog's fur, he realized something important. Seamus's legacy wasn't about how many people knew his name or how many awards he had received. His legacy was about the people whose lives had been touched by him, the children who had learned to smile again, the elderly who had found comfort in his presence, and the countless others who had felt less alone because of his gentle spirit. Seamus had shown them all that kindness, no matter how simple, could change the world. It wasn't about being the biggest or the most famous. It was about being there when someone needed you the most. And in his own quiet way, Seamus had done just that, leaving behind a legacy of love and compassion that would last far beyond the galleries, the events, and the fame. With that thought in his heart, Seamus's owner leaned back in his chair, content in the knowledge that their journey together had been more than he ever could have hoped for. The world may have known Seamus, but he would always be to his owner just a beloved dog, a giant heart in a giant body, whose true beauty was in the way he made others feel. And with that, Seamus's tail gave a soft thump against the floor, as if in agreement. In the quiet of their home, surrounded by love, they both knew that their bond was enough.